Hello, Mechwarriors, and welcome to the Mechbay, where we fix your mech and fix your game.
What's going on, Mechwarriors? I'm your host, Steve, and I've got my co-host, Lore Master Denim.
Howdy, howdy.
And two strangers who climbed into my white van. I had written blind boxes on the side. I don't know who these people are.
Golly, where's the candy?
We are the Mechbay Podcast, your number one source for all things casual competitive BattleTech. And like I mentioned today, we have two very special guests with us today. We have Keith Hann, the associate developer for play and design in BattleTech, and Aron Cahall, assistant line developer for BattleTech. Gentlemen?
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on.
No, of course. Thank you for coming. And we will keep this very short and very sweet. There's a huge announcement that came out just the other day. We've got a new starter box, a new core box, and a new core rule book. You guys are here very generously to help us kind of dive into some of this and talk about what I think most people will have on their minds. But before we do that, I'd like to just very briefly, in case any of our listeners don't know who you are, give us a quick summary of who you are and, you know, what you do for BattleTech and why they should be excited that you are here.
Aron. Oh, leader.
Leader, nothing. Assistant to the leader, assistant to the regional manager. My name is Aron Cahall. I'm the assistant line developer for BattleTech. I've been involved as a contributor since 2013 as a writer, editor, line editor for BattleTech, meaning the person reviewing the books and trying not to accidentally delete the back half of a sidebar like I did in Shattered Fortress. It's there. Go find it. It cuts off suddenly. That's my fault. But since 2020, I've been the assistant line developer under Ray Arastia, just kind of overseeing generally the words side of the IP or helping organize some of the projects and things like that. Ray and others do the art, so that tends to fall into my expertise is editing, writing, and helping get these things out the door.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. And Keith?
I'm the rules guy. I mean, the title makes it simpler. I'm head of the rules team. I'm head of the errata team. And then because those things so heavily cross over with rules, we would just eventually put in charge of rules development for BattleTech in general. I've been involved since, I guess, formally 2009 when I started doing playtesting stuff. I was making those gigantic fan random assignment tables. And someone said, well, I mean, you look crazy enough to maybe want to do more of this. How would you join our fact-checking team? And slowly moved on from there. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being here. I'll probably thank you 1,000 times because I'm very excited that you're here because I have a ton of questions. I know Denim has been chomping at the bit to get some of these mysteries solved. Now, before we get into our main subject, I do have one question for Keith. Mm-hmm. Is it Zotl? External?
Yeah.
How is that pronounced?
Zotl, yeah. I mean, it was taken from a very old, well, no, I guess not too old, but very obscure science fiction book called The Last Legends of Earth by A.A. Antanasio. I was reading it at the time when StarCraft came out, and it's about some really creepy bug aliens who feed on pain and some other aliens who are fighting a cross-time war with them. And I thought it sounded like a great name as a Zerg handle when I was playing StarCraft in internet cafes back in the 90s. So I've used it ever since, and it's spelled Zed with a Z in the book, but otherwise, yeah, I'm very fond of the book. It's a very, very strange book, but
I have to look into it at some point here. But I would dare say that the name is now more closely associated with you than that book or those aliens. So I think it's yours now. Well, gentlemen, the news has been broken. The word is out. It's a big announcement. We've got new stuff that everyone's been asking for a very long time. We've got a new starter box, a new core box with a bunch of minis, and most importantly, new core rulebook, which I can't imagine the amount of work that must have gone into this. Would you care to tell us a little bit about how you, the team, everyone approached such a Herculean task to rewrite all the rules for BattleTech?
Well, I guess I can answer a little bit from the developmental perspective, but then Keith should really dive into his process, the kind of genesis of idea to making this a real thing. I will say that, the idea that Total Warfare needed a replacement it has been in the water supply for a long time, and you don't have to look any harder than looking at the Battle Mech manual. It's been out for years now, which was Keith's effort and attempt to streamline and better present just the mech rules. But it speaks to a bigger need. I mean, I think anyone would. Total Warfare came out in 2006 for anyone who doesn't know, and it's 20 years old this year. I am writing about that, Keith, right? 2006. Yeah. So, the layout, we don't even make books that way anymore. The way the layout is done with the 2-bar, 2-column wall of text style pages, and what we can do now with just graphic presentation and layout and all these other different things, both that our folks like Dak have learned since then, and just what the technology allows for even. I mean, that's how old it is, that the technology to make the book is advanced. And Keith can speak better to this because I like the way he makes the point. But Total Warfare, people like to say the rules haven't changed, but they were always changing, printing to printing. We just weren't changing the title of the book. And that got to be, a little bit of a barrier, I think. There's, I guess, some retail theory to this, but having a new edition, a new product that is the core every so often is a good thing. I think it builds hype like we've seen in the last few days. And I think it helps kind of refresh and create a natural point at which, as Keith did, we can look at the whole environment of the rules, how we're presenting them, what the game is, rather than just fiddling with language here and there. So much so that I know it's true for the Alpha Strike Commanders edition. I think it was true for Total Warfare. Dak warned us there were certain pages that could not have any more text added or tweaked without having to reflow the entire book. It's been tweaked beyond the point of no return. So anyway, Ray, when he became line developer in 2019, one of his priorities was to get a new Total Warfare out there. Not just a new printing, not just a new cover as we've done like half a dozen times, it feels like, but a truly new book. And as we started kind of organizing the team, I came on as assistant and we started, as Keith joked, handing out titles to people to create some sort of basic team structure, hierarchical structure. Keith has been doing this essentially doing this sort of work, this rules thinking, the rules errata for years now. And there was no one else we could have or would have wanted to lead this project more than him. So I'll make that the segue to Keith to talk about. It was several years. I think you were sort of percolating on this until we, like 8 months ago, said, okay, it's time to make this a real boy at the highest possible speed, which we have done.
Go. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, there's a variety of different levels to it. At first, there's always the idea that there will be a new book. It's inevitable. Every game does this unless you're going out of business. There will be a new book at some point. That's how it works, right? Because every game is a living game. Every game, the player base iterates it. This is too strong. This is too weak. This is unclear. I'd like to see more of this. Then the company produces product to support it. And then that particular ecosystem grows, and then you want to collapse it back down. And then a new book contains the best of what was made, purges some of the stuff no one uses anymore, cleans things up, and we move on. So I knew this was coming. I've always liked the game design. It's always been something I enjoy. I do this just for myself. I mean, the very first thing I did, I had like an old 386, and I wrote a BattleTech, a sequel to the first edition Battle Force for the Clan Invasion on a 386 using a basic processor, which really didn't like being used as a word processor. That was just kind of thing that was fun to do. I've written my own D&D clone and just this random stuff that's just entertaining. So as one of those projects, I started compiling the idea of what would a BattleTech new edition? And I was thinking like more of a new edition. What if we could change this? What if we could change this? It was just sort of a pie in the sky project. But as part of that, I realized eventually all of these sort of speculations, there's got to be a new book coming. Eventually, I'll take detailed notes in my thinking. And presumably as the rules guy, I'll be assigned to this in some way. So I'll have a bunch of stuff ready to go. Day one, this project opens, I can go, here you go. Here's a bunch of unwanted proposals for this new project. What do you think? And then I was put in charge of it. Pleasant surprise, not something I expected, but I had a lot of material already ready to go. Now, because I was thinking more aggressively than what we wound up doing, a bunch of it would have to be thrown out. Like, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do this. And then there were other things I wanted to do that we tried our best, but my initial idea is garbage. Just to put it frankly, we're like, oh, I'm sure this will work. And then we spin up the formal process and we get people looking at it and go, yeah, well, you write this and you think it's going to be good, but it doesn't, people poke holes in it and you realize, oh, I really want to do that. So yeah, we got the process going. Initially it's interesting because Aron, Ray, Randall, they take very high level looks at this. That was the whole point of creating positions like mine. So you don't have to micromanage everything, do it all yourself. So they sit down, they construct this broad scheme of what they want to see. We envision a new line. We envision a new rule book. Here's how we think it's going to fit in the line. So they say to me, we think it should be a mech book. We want assets in it. We want this. But otherwise, now go and do it. It's not going to be, also, we want you to write this paragraph and we want you to write this subheader. And here's how we want you to conduct the construction process. So that's left all to me. I get to decide this stuff. They're going to review it, of course. It's just way too important to leave to one person, but I get to decide the process. So that was left to me too. And that was interesting. I'd already got a lot of good people I'm working with because of the rules team side of things. Being the head of the rules team, I had an experienced core of guys I could go to and go, I know you know the rules. You all play. You all have experience. It's not just theory crafting. I can use you guys to help sanity check all the crazy stuff I'm coming up with. And then I want to hear your crazy ideas. And so we were bouncing back and forth on each other. I set up a second team for that. And neither of them spoke to the other. Neither of them, I think even now, knows.
It's good, yeah.
Because, you don't want that group thing to develop. Sometimes people are just strong personalities, right? And they're not trying to, but they take over the discussion. And people wind up just naturally gravitating towards them, their opinions, what they're saying. So I had two kind of solid groups, and I would put the same proposals to both, and then we'd argue and debate and come up with new ideas, and then kind of mesh them all together. And that's how we came up with ideas as to what was going to be in this new book.
Which, by the way, for anyone out there who's, how do I get into working on BattleTech, or how do you get to where you are? Everything Keith said is why he was the right person to lead this project. That he came in with ideas and assumptions, but was willing to test them openly and say, well, all right, these suck. This isn't the right way to go. And it sounds to many people obvious, but to many others, it'd be very easy to fall into, this is the way I play BattleTech. This is the way everyone I know or in my local group plays BattleTech. So therefore this is right. Or this is the way the game should function at a rulebook level. And I think, it was clear to us that Keith was willing to both have his own assumptions tested and, as you just described, organize the teams of people working and testing these things in such a way that we weren't going to essentially, the worst case scenario would be to create like this cabal of people who think the game should be played one way and end up grabbing the steering wheel and jerking the entire rule set. I mean, say they were all tournament players, right? Suddenly we get a book that's like super into legislating organized play or trying to become that kind of a book and forgets about casual kitchen table Saturday afternoon players, or the opposite, right? That everything's very loosey-goosey and it's whatever you want and there's nothing for a real rules-focused person. Anyway, he was definitely the right person to do this. And I mean, I think you all will see that in the product that comes out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys put out. I mean, for the final draft, because I know, Aron, you mentioned a little bit of this. Testing, right? Testing assumptions, testing ideas. For the first time that I can remember, there was a very large and very public play test. I'd be really curious to hear your views in general, right? How do you think it went? Did you find the responses helpful? Any major surprises that you found out while doing the playtest? Was there something in particular you thought people were going to love and they absolutely hate it? I'm curious to hear. Keith, let's start with you.
We've done limited playtests before, and I'm a big fan of them. When they came out, we tested the initial release of the Battle Mech manual, and that was very, very helpful. There were whole sections, really fiddly stuff in terms of displacement and things that got a really good going over in the beta. I remember the long discussions on timing issues there. Extra gear was added to the Battle Mech manual, and people correctly pointed out, okay, look, you've got a new book, but you've just released these new TROs that have new tech in them, and this book doesn't do that. You should add that. It was good, and it really gave me a sense of like, okay, We can draw on the player base and get feedback and help cover our blind spots. This is stuff we didn't think of. We did limited beta for interstellar operations. There was a beta for A Time of War back in the day. These are all useful. They all gathered great stuff. And I remember being a fan. I remember desperately seeing things. I'm like, I want to contribute to this. I think I could help with this. Or you should do this. You're missing this. And you want to get that in there. And I know there's tons of people out there like that. We can use them as long as you have an ability to filter out the bad feedback. I mean, that comes too. And there's people who are earnest, but don't really have a good grasp on game design. There's people who just hate everything and want you to know it. There's people who don't understand the scope of the project and so have perfectly reasonable suggestions, but don't understand the limitations we work under. Why should they? There's all, you've got to be able to carefully call on that. But after doing that, there's still so much good feedback out there. So many smart people, so many people who have lifetimes of experience in this game. I'm 40 years old, right? We can take this and we can use it. So I really wanted to see it. Everyone was on board. Aaron, they were just, let's do this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't recall there being any pushback to the idea of a play test in those first discussions in August. I know you and I were probably the loudest voices of we have to do a robust months-long play test and not, and really be willing to not make everything a surprise. Yeah. And not make it a like, ta-da, here's the new rule set. Like, yes, you'll be spoiling some ideas in some sense. People can't see me doing the air quotes.
It's an audio only format.
Correct.
It's okay.
But that was, and by the time this comes out, you'll see that we've started doing the same thing with Alpha Strike at Adepticon. There's going to be as the year goes on, a public play test for new elements for upcoming restack rebuild of the Alpha Strike rulebook, taking some of the lessons we learned from Keith's work in the playtest here to that system. But, I think it's, at this point, with a game that's been around as long as BattleTech, there's people who understand it like a second language or even a first language. And capturing that is important. I think Keith could probably speak to some of the stuff you asked about, things we didn't expect or that we tested. I know there was some stuff I was surprised got as strong a pushback as it did.
Yeah. Well, what were some of the surprises?
I can't say there was anything off the top of my head that was fully surprising. There were things we weren't sure about. That's why we put them out there, right? I don't know if this is going to work. And then lo and behold, it doesn't. I thought it would, but I was prepared to accept that it might not. The side table change is the obvious one. We knew there was a risk there. We knew it might not work. We were broadly optimistic, and then it didn't work. So can I say I was surprised? Well, not really, but it just didn't work. Something I would think I was actually surprised about, it didn't even make it to playtest. I had been so disgusted by the watching games ground to a halt over and over from the Total Warfare Initiative system that my initial proposal was, if you have more units, you move them all first, done. And it was like, I've got 1 and you got 47. Okay, you move 46, I move 1. I've watched games again and again just grind to that halt with the people start, because you have to constantly calculate ratios. Okay, sure. How many went, who went? But I put that out there and I'm like, well, I'm sure other people will feel like I do. And then just immediately, because these changes leaked, right? And people started discussing and I go, this is terrible. Who thought this? And I was like, okay, fine. This was just me. No one is quite as rabidly in hatred of, hates this idea of how things are now in Total Warfare compared to me. Fine. I got to step this back. Let's not even put it into play test. It's obvious no one likes it. Let's kill it right off the bat.
My surprise was the side tables, in the sense that I thought the speed of play factor would, 1, occur, that it would speed play up, and that 2, people would be delighted by that. Don't you want the game to be faster? And it turns out that a fairly, I think, vocal majority were like, nah, I'm fine with it. Either A, it didn't really speed things up because I had to untrain my brain from decades of how the side tables work, or I like slowing down a little bit for the reality simulator of, as somebody walks, maybe you hit their arm, the other arm, the leg, you know what I mean? Like people liked that kind of verisimilitude.
I totally get that, because I play a lot, like a whole lot. And I would say that the side tables were the one that when I first talked about it, I'm like, that just feels weird. I don't know about that. And like you said, Aron, same thing. I've been playing since 1986. I know the side table. I know all the tables. And so it was actually slower for me to do it the other way. But since we're like playtesting this, I'm like, okay, look, guys, this month we are just going to do this. So every single game we played, we did that. And I think it was less than 3 weeks later, I was like, this is really fast. Like this is just faster. And I kind of like how the flanking works better. Like it actually, I was starting to come around pretty strong. And then it was announced that, oh, that probably wouldn't make it into it anyway. And so my, like it's this emotional yo-yo going up and down of, well, I don't like it. Well, now I do like it. Well, now it doesn't matter. And it's crazy. And that does remind me, because I was a QA lead for years at a video game company. So I did a lot of play test and stuff. And I think what Keith was touching on, where a good playtest, you're going to have to parse the information that you get, and you have to separate the emotional responses from the actual data. And sometimes it's commingled into one sentence or one feedback. Yet you've got a ton of information. What's an emotional response? What's usable data? And how do I deal with all of that information coming in? That's something that you have to have a skill in. So if it's anything like Battle Mech Manual, fantastic job.
On that note of data, I just want to point out, and to butter him up a little further, I was the guy, because I work in marketing, that wanted to reduce everybody's feedback to a number. Please pick a number between 1 and 5, and I will aggregate all of you into an easily digestible number. Because that is how my marketing brain works. Keith was the person who argued much the other way of, please let them have as much space as they want to write whatever they want. I will read every word and put it in the soup. What's going on?
Yeah.
And Keith, I give you a lot of credit for that, because you were the one who wanted to, try and intake as much truly subjective, written out thoughts from people. So for anyone out there who worries that I submitted this form and I probably just got reduced to a yes or a no.
No, I read them all.
That's fantastic. Like I like that a lot.
I'm an academic by background. I'm a military historian. I'm used to parsing a lot of written statements and going through mountains of text. For me, that is how I learn things. Okay, let's take apart all these narratives and pull out the truth, whatever it is that we're looking for. I mean, there was one category of player or of a feedback that I didn't list earlier, and I should have. And this one, because it comes back to what we're talking about now. The person who just plain likes X, whatever it is, and they can't be wrong. They're like, this works for me. They're not even trying to argue it on objective levels. Like, ammo explosion is the best one. I simply like large explosions, and I cannot lie. Like, that's it. We're doing that. That's what I want. I'm not even going to try to convince you numbers, blah, blah, blah. Right. Just, I enjoy this aspect of the game. And you can't dismiss that. And so there's also absolutely an aspect of the popularity contest to parsing these rules. So some of that I'm reading, and I'm reading these responses, and I'm also tallying in my head, what's the general feeling of X and Y rule? There's a rule that can succeed from a mechanical element, and succeed, by succeed, I mean, does what it is supposed to. But if people don't like it, it's a failed rule. And I think of like the way leg destruction was working. There's some other ones like that. If enough people said, I don't care about the mechanics of your new ammo explosion rule, I simply don't like it, want everything to explode in a giant fireball viewable from space, then fine, that's it. We would have thrown out that rule. I think we judged correctly that there were enough people who were looking for something else. They still want it to be painful, but not necessarily totally devastating. And yet there will absolutely be people who are like, no, I'm sticking to the old ammo explosion rules, and I intend to have those, if possible, in the future tech ops, because there's always going to be that element of the player base that wants to see them. So there'll be an optional rule, but at least they'll still be available to draw on. I mean, that's the plan now. The book isn't written yet. It's not even announced yet.
Right.
It'll be right next to stack polling.
I was going to say, I like at our table, we will always have stack polling.
Not only are there people who like ammo explosions, there are people who really like explosions, like on a molecular level, and really want, it's not enough their mech drops like a puppet with its strings cut. I need it to destroy it and the zip code that is standing in.
Right.
So let's not take that away from people. There's stuff that's cut. We can move that over there, and then people can still have the kind of game they prefer.
Throw the optional rules in. You and your opponent agree. Great. Good. Go. Do it.
given everything you've seen with the playtest, can we expect future public playtests for new content, or is this a kind of a one and done, or this is a good thought experiment, but maybe next time we'll keep it in-house?
I like it, but I mean, this isn't the sort of decision I make. I would advocate for it, but there may be perfectly sound logistical reasons why it can't be done for X or Y book, depending at the time, right? But I'd like to. I find them incredibly helpful.
That's really the answer is from, it's almost a project management question, right? Of if we do things correctly and leave ourselves the time for rules books. Now, I mean, we're not going to run out like, source books or story stuff for public review. But there are people who I think would like us to do that. But from a rules perspective, like I said, the Alpha Strike rules, folks will have a chance to kick the tires on those. It's a very popular rule system that powers a lot of events, including Steve's. And so I think... Are
you coming? You're both invited. If you'd like to come to another city, you can come. Detroit's nice this time of year.
Detroit's nice time, any time of year, right?
Yeah, it's about as nice as it'll be.
It's funny because my understanding of Detroit is only from like the famous documentary RoboCop,
which they have a statue now. So
there's a statue. We can show you the statue. It's very nice.
I don't know what I'd expect.
Take that Rocky statue. Ed 209. We will certainly do Alpha Strike and other, just kind of wrapping up the big picture thought that I think Keith agrees that what this book does is puts Classic back into what I've been calling like active development, meaning this core rulebook will be followed by another iteration at some point. I like to think this sets the precedent for those type of books when we do big rules changes, big rules developments that, we would do this sort of a process. At least that's how I presented to Randall and Ray talking a little bit about it is like after, I don't know if I ever told you this, Keith, like the first couple playtests came out and seeing how much response we were getting. I know I made the point to them, we have to keep doing this now. You realize that like, because we did it for this book, we can't then just like, we've created expectation on the part of the customer and the player base that, if let's say in 4 years, you come back and do, core rulebook 2 and we don't play test. We just put it out. I mean, people are going to feel like, well, what are you doing? Like,
they'll riot. They're
going to assume that something went very, very poorly with the first playtest.
Under new management, right.
And that it's their fault that we're not doing it anymore. That's what'll happen.
If everyone does their job and everything goes well, you won't have to do it for another 20 years. So perfect, right?
We do not want to wait that long, that's for sure. I mean, I mentioned this in the playtest notes, right? It's a fine line. No one likes buying the same book over and over again. People get annoyed by constant churn. But at the same token, no one likes sitting on Total Warfare for 12 printing. So you've got to find a balance for it. Historically, BattleTech has done 4 to 5 years. I don't see anything wrong with that. It remains to be seen. We're still trying to get this book out the door. We're not talking about the future things, right? But there is an absolute determination not to wait 20 years and 12 printings to do this again. Like, we need to keep this somewhat more active. Beyond that, I don't want to commit. It's just, there is an understanding that we shouldn't try to lock it into stasis. I can't even call it stasis. It's fake stasis. Because again, it's like, the 10th printing, we wrote skinning. The 7th printing, we changed how infantry gets out of transports. On this print, if you own the first printing and the 12th printing or 11th printing, whatever actually came out, you already have the revised edition. There were like 2 revised editions worth of changes in there in a 65-page errata document, right? Like we just want to make it more public facing, no surprises. When you sit down with your opponent and they have the book that you have, you can expect to play the same game. Not,
right.
I've got the 2nd printing and you have the 10th. And oh man, the following things are so different. But we both have the same book.
The way I've been describing it is product stasis. The rules are not in stasis, but the product was in stasis, right? It was the same title, often the same cover, or, the same spine art for many printings. So that's public facing is the right way to think about it. As Keith told you, with the years he's been working on errata, it's always been an active development from our perspective. We've always been tinkering with the book, doing things. But again, there's a lot of people walking around who say the rules don't change. It's the same rule book, that you had years and years ago is good to go. And that's product stasis. That's them saying, well, it has the same title. It's the same book.
I mean, like I said, I was the rules team lead, the errata team lead. I would decide what come out as errata. I eventually, again, as part of that sort of handing it off to developers thing, I didn't have to run errata documents past people. But there's a lot of responsibility there. So I really tried not to backseat develop. I wasn't the rules developer for many years later. So there was a constant desire to, okay, can we really put this out as errata? Like, is this really, we know this is creating suboptimal play, but is it technically wrong or broken? Not really. How many of those sort of changes do we really want to make in a book? And I mean, looking back, I think we did too many. There were all sorts of things we just said, that's a cool idea, but we just can't do this, not and still call it total warfare. I want to be more conservative along those lines going forward, knowing that there will be actual books to replace this book in the future so that we're not springing unpleasant surprises in people via errata. Because there's only so many people who read the errata.
Oh, sure.
They don't keep up on it. To some degree, they shouldn't have to understand the state of the game, or at least put it out for a reason, but maybe not so fast. So when one comes out, it's like, oh, this is meaningful. This is a big deal. But at the same time, I can count on it not rewriting the book that I have. It's just, this is fixing a lot of good stuff. Outright errors. Actual development waits for the new book.
So I want to get nitty gritty into a lot of the changes in the new core book. But before we do that, I want to touch very briefly on some of the new boxes that are coming out. Aron, the starter box. What's in this box? What can people expect when they get it? Obviously, we see the Contio and the Hammerhead, two very new mechs. What else is in there?
It is the replacement for the beginner box. So we try and keep it, both at a price point and a complexity level in terms of the materials in there that's straightforward. It's the half record sheets, the quick start rules that don't use heat, that are ready to pick right up out of the box without having the experienced person at the game store walk you through each one. The Conti and the Hammerhead, Keith was on that call. We all, I think you were, we all presented our ideas, and Bryn beat me to the punch. Let the record show, I also had Contio and Hammerhead on my list of two. Because they're iconic, they're very Ill-Clan era mechs. They kind of fit the pattern of mech we've seen, mech we haven't, in terms of plastic. So we were not just reprinting two that were already in force packs, nor, for sculpting and price point reasons, cost to produce reasons, we're not creating two whole new ones.
Right. Because this is like the third Hammerhead, but the first Contio.
The first Contio.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a popular mech.
Oh, I love it.
Been accosted many times at various events by folks who want to know where the Contio mini is. And, and I understand they are wonky choices, right? TSM. Contio is TSM, famously.
So obviously the beginner box doesn't use heat. It's got those half sheets, which again, brilliant choice on any standard record sheet, can be folded in half and becomes one of these beginner sheets, like by design. But the Contio uses a lot of heat. Its stealth armor is 10 heat whenever you activate that. And TSM activates at 9 heat. But if you're not using heat, how does that work in this product?
Keith, is this a rules question for you, or is this a...
No, this is more like I think it's more like a development sense of like, why these choices and how do you intend them to work from a beginner level?
Right. Because there's some advanced stuff in these mechs for a beginner type thing. We've got claws, we've got stealth armor, we've got hardened armor, we've got TSM. These are all pretty high level items. And the beginner box doesn't tend to use, it doesn't use heat sinks, it doesn't use minimum ranges, it doesn't use internal slots or critical hits or anything like that. So how does that work for TSM and a Contio?
So I'm looking actually on my other screen here at the mech record sheets. There's half sheets, and there is a different variant of Contio.
Ooh,
with
look at that.
medium pulse lasers, ER small lasers, micropulse. It's a laser boat, which is the one that we recommend to use for the first mission. In fact, it says first mission. Use this one on it. And same with the Hammerhead. There is two versions of each of these in the QSR, the half sheets. So there's a playable version without. There are also some rules in the rule book to describe what to do. If you do want to use the other one, the quick start rules have some, there's some fudging, frankly. But remember too that the quick start rules are meant to give you a taste of the game, not necessarily a perfectly balanced taste of the game. There's a certain amount of rule of cool that we wanted to put into this box set, where if you're a new player, you read through the rules, you get a sense of it, and then your mech, your little punch goblin, puts its claws through someone's cockpit. And yes, there's an argument of fair or unfair, but to your point about people who just like things that explode and ammo explosions, there's a certain amount of, oh, this game's great. And you're the one who got punched in the face, maybe saying that, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when I think about this a lot in scenario design, where there's often a feeling that a scenario, when you write it, has to be 50-50. It has to be a coin flip. It has to be perfectly balanced. And I think it depends what your goals are for the book, the scenario, the greater scheme of things. But sometimes there's a lot of fun to play without things being exactly matchy. And Sam, especially in a beginner box, we want you to get a taste of the game, get hooked on it, and move on. Move on to the full box. Move on to the core rulebook. So, if that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, I can accept that. But it's also, there's a certain, like I said, a rule of cool, just a vibe that we want with a box like this. You spend $20. It might just be something you'll try on a random Saturday. You like miniature games, but you don't really know BattleTech. You've heard of it. This box will give you a sense of, these two mechs are very specific in what they do. They're not just sort of like generic medium mech with a couple of weapons that's very ubiquitous and very useful, but kind of vanilla-y. These two are, I get it. It's like, I like to try some ice cream, and you hand them some crazy Ben & Jerry's flavor. Like, maybe that's a turnoff. But I think we wanted mechs that were really going to give people an experience. Something that they're going to walk away going, well, that was certainly a thing.
Yeah, I love that there's new variants of both of these. That was going to be one of my next questions. That's super exciting to me.
Yeah, there's new variants in the big box too. There's a new Mad Cat Mark II, and I know that because Randall tested it against I think it's the Mad Cat Mark II 7. And there's a 6 that has the hard gel.
Quick question, right? With this replacing the beginner box, are we going to see the Vindicator show up in a different box set, or does everyone need to stock up right now?
So the plan is this has been the most common question. The Game Armored Combat in the beginner box mechs will appear in 2 force packs. I realize there are 10 mechs. Ray and Randall and I were arguing over what to do with the other 2. Words like Bug Company box started getting thrown around as a way to solve some of the problems of how do we fit. So we hear you people that want a Bug Company box. We're aware of the demand. But that could be a way to solve some of this. But point is, there'll be 2 force packs to cover what was in those 2 boxes, really. And then the Clan Invasion box will also be retired. And the 5 mechs in that, not the elementals, will go into a Clan Battlestar.
Nice.
Very cool.
So this will be available. We can't not sell a Battlemaster.
Right.
We just don't sell those anymore. We thought that'd be a good, solid business decision.
They're locked in the Disney vault.
But in this case, it's nice to have the answer. I hate to say it, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone. Sometimes decisions will be made, and then the second order effects of those decisions don't get decided until they have to be decided very quickly. Like on announcement day, when everybody points out, hey, what about the thing? Oh, yeah, we should have an answer for the thing, shouldn't we?
Whoops.
In this case, we do.
Good.
So.
You mentioned that the core box will be replacing a Game of Armored Combat, which leads us right into our next question. What is it in the starter box that would bring a veteran player to purchase it outside of just getting new plastic? Is there anything in there that might entice somebody, like a new map or anything like that? Or is it just you want a Contio, buy the box?
I think it's the Contio, but I also would like to think it's the feeling that it'll be an interesting experience for that veteran player to play with somebody new they're trying to get in. Denim, how many Wolverines have you piloted?
All of them.
But not just variants. I mean, like instances of piloting a Wolverine. A couple 100 times, maybe?
That's what I'm saying. I like so many, because I've been playing. The Wolverine was one of the first 16 mechs when I started playing in 86. So the answer is yes, I have played all.
How many Contios have you piloted?
I have piloted a Contio probably three times, and they're all like Solaris games except for one.
So there's the answer to your question. It's a chance to introduce a new player in a beginner-friendly way with a mech that they could not necessarily just pilot in their sleep and know every range band and don't even need to look at the record sheet because they know how many armor points it has and what it moves and could play it pretty much while running a video game off on the side.
And on that note, like when I take a Wolverine, even if the person I'm playing against hasn't played nearly as much as me, they recognize that mech. When I brought the Contu out for the first time, they just stared at it and they're like, what is that? And then I used it and they're like, I don't like this at all. Like it wasn't as powerful as they thought it was. They just didn't understand it. And so it was way scarier, which made an impact. And they immediately wanted to play it in one of their next games too. So yeah, I get that. And it's
Denim, this is because the Conti is made of nightmares.
It is. It really is. It's awesome.
It's fueled on tears. You just pour straight unleaded tears right into the fuel reactor.
The maps are getting a visual refresh. They're the same maps, but they look nice. So, I mean, if you like variants, you got to hologram cover. But it's a chance to make them look nice, right? Like gives them a nice alien look.
Yeah.
I thought Keith was going to suggest foil maps, at which point I was Randall, I need you to go ahead and turn the podcast off at this point. Just nothing else was said. Turn it off. Turn it off, man.
Yeah.
Premium map sheets.
Yeah. So my 3D terrain for my other maps for that will still work.
Yes.
Yeah, they look nice. The new ones are pretty shiny. I like the look of it, but in the end, they have the same placement of terrain and all of that.
Yeah, those were Marco paint overs, and they really do look cool. He did some interesting things. If you know, there's a documentary called Baraka, which is landscapes on Earth that you can hardly believe are on Earth. And these maps reminded me of some of those landscapes of like just color palettes and just, it doesn't just look like desert number 7. Yeah. They're really interesting.
Nice.
I would definitely like to see more of that going forward. I think one of the things that has held us back is the implementation of our environmental rules. And they haven't really worked all that well, so people haven't really wanted to play them, which means that there's not really a lot of demand to release maps full of them that no one's going to want to play on. It's like different variations of, like, think back to the old map set with the Heavy Woods map set.
I was going to mention that.
Pure woods hell, right? Like no one can see anybody, no one can do anything. There's under the current environmental rules, there's a lot of ways to make that kind of map in new and exciting ways to torture people. I don't, it's the tornado map and the ice map and all of them are pretty punitive. And so I think that has tended to push us towards city landscapes, deserts, grassland. If we can make these environmental rules to work, we can start getting new maps that have really embraced some of the new environments and get some real variety going. I'm really excited to see that. I can't wait to see more like alien world-ish kind of maps that really emphasize the fact that BattleTech is a vast universe with a lot of different environments going on.
Right? Every planet doesn't look like Earth.
There is a piece of art in the core rulebook that I don't know if I've showed you this yet, Keith.
Yeah, I did see it. It's beautiful. I know exactly what you're talking about.
One of the chapter breaks. So the chapters in the core rulebook are done like the source books, where it's like a double-page spread piece of art introducing the chapter. And it's one of mechs fighting. It looks like Felucia from Star Wars, but pushed even further, where it's like fungal plant. I mean, it's wild. And yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, there don't have to be quite so many Class M planets in the inner sphere, or things that look like the place that Star Trek shot outside of LA, the rocks,
the like, orange mesas and stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. New maps, new variants. I'm thrilled. I'm very excited. Real quickly, we'll just touch on the core box because you've answered most of the questions on this already. Can you just tell us just real briefly which mechs are in this box and what people can get excited for?
So core box, 8 mechs, same as previously. It is, let's see, I'm going to try and do this off the top of my head. Regent, Madcat Mark II, the Eris, the Solitaire, the Uziel. Keep going. What else was there? The Rock, the Rakshasa, and I am blanking.
Big shoulder gun.
Right. The Hollander, Josh's favorite beer can, of course.
Right.
Oh, Vulture, the Vulture Mark 4D. How could I forget? My baby boy, my favorite competitive try-hard mech in Alpha, the Vulture Mark 4D. So this is an eclectic, we are aware this is an eclectic lineup of mechs. This was, again, Ray, Randall, myself, and Bryn. Basically, I was on vacation in August, so I'm sitting on the beach with a piece of paper, the only guy doing homework on the beach in Ocean City, Maryland, writing out what 8 mechs I would put in. To a box, by the way, both these boxes are Ilclan Era boxes and were designed from Jump Street as such. I thought that Ray and I were prepared to fight, like to make that a hill we were going to die on. That, the last printing of Game Armored Combat, we managed to get a little Ilclan pamphlet in there And that was supposed to be, like, we fought pretty hard for a full overhaul, just make it an Ilk-Clan box. And that ended up becoming this project instead. So we all kind of had ideas, and I think pieces of all of our ideas sort of got smushed together into these 8. They are similar to the thinking in the starter box. They'll make an impact. They're different. I don't think the same person had the Mad Cat Mark II and the Rakshasa on their list.
Right.
That's an example of smush occurring. I definitely had the Vulture Mark IV. Selfishly, I was tired of the arms breaking off of my Metal 1 at tournaments, and it was out of scale. As Steve knows, that thing in Metal is way bigger than it should be, so an Alpha matters a lot.
It was great. I could see from around almost every corner.
Oh, yeah, super. And it broke all the time every time I moved my movement tray. So they do I think they cover most of the battlefield roles. You'll get a good mix. There's a little something different with each of them. I think there are new variants, as I said, for each. So even for folks who kind of know what the 2 or 3 versions of Rakshasa, there's something different to look at. The models are great. I've seen them in, my grubby little hands. They are cool. They look good. They paint up well. So that said, and maybe this is a good segue to the rules. There is a little bit of a rules complexity creep in this box. Randall's said that came from his experience in running many, many, many grinder games. He and Bryn have a regular, semi-regular grinder, large grinder game at Zulu's up in the Seattle area. And what they learned, and he talked us around on, I think, is that new players are able to handle weapon complexity once they understand the elements of the game. Teaching them the elements of Classic is the learning curve. There is a learning curve there. But once you get them there, his feeling was that for a lot of these weapons, at least, if not all the technology, which Keith will get into with the rules part. All right, so this thing it shoots the same way for attack declaration, target number determination, damage resolution, damage application. It just hits at a -2 because it's a pulse laser. It's an ER gun. It shoots further. The numbers on the sheet are different. So, there are certainly cases, though, in these mechs where there is technology that's going to take a minute to learn. But for a lot of it, I think once a player gets a handle on how to play BattleTech, especially with the work Keith has done to make the rules cleaner, to make the presentation nicer, that Dak and Ray have been really working hard on getting the layout looking super, super clean. I think the technology element, is manageable.
Yeah, I agree, because my monthly campaign I run in Ilk-Clan era. So I super appreciate the mech selection in that new box set a lot. But we have a lot of new players who come in for that, and it's a good way to introduce them because, like, I, as the Op 4, control half of the units on the board, and I can introduce them to Ilk-Clan weapon and equipment concepts gradually or at a pace that I think they can handle. And they pick it up really, really well. I allow them to customize mechs as they earn points. So I see more and more of that Ilk-Clan technology being added to their forces too, at a good pace. It's really, really nice. So yeah, I agree with that.
Well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, we've been at this almost an hour. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will tackle the core rulebook. And frankly, Dedham and I have a lot of questions about why certain rules were changed, the thought process behind them. And I would love to get Keith's input. So we'll be back in just a few. Hi there, Bill Shift here with Mech's Tape, the Inner Sphere's strongest and most reliable hard gel-based mech repair tape. Did you take a PPC to the cockpit and need to seal in a jiffy? That's a lot of damage. Then you need Mech's Tape. Trusted by Mechwarriors everywhere, it has over 9,000 applications. Are you out of armor plating in the field and need a quick fix? Mech's Tape. Did your senior tech get blown up in the last orbital bombardment and need to do the repairs on your own? Mech's Tape. Your heatsink gets shot through and you're losing coolant fast? Mech's Tape. Straight from the Krenzi cluster, invented by the top of the scientist cast, our patented hard gel tape formula will have you back in the action in no time. Can be found everywhere the finest mechs are sold. Not suitable for repairing fusion engine shielding, Gauss rifle coils, and has been known to influence the bedding habits of various megafauna. And we're back with none other than Keith Hann and Aron Cahall to answer questions about the core rulebook. Keith, this replaces Total Warfare, Battle Mech Manual, both?
Yeah, I mean, well, insofar as it can, it's the new core rulebook. I mean, the whole idea of, first and foremost, what the hell's a core rulebook? Well, we didn't answer that very well in the past. We sort of just decided every main rulebook was a core rulebook. But eventually then you're like, okay, fine. So these are the core rulebooks. Well, what's the core rulebook? We start getting this iterational thing of, like, plain and simple. People come into the game and go, what's the one book I need to know how to play?
Yeah.
That is not and cannot be, even back in the Total Warfare days, and definitely not now, the one book that has everything. It is absolutely impossible. It's a non-starter. If someone says, why don't you just make one book? Again, that wasn't possible 20 years ago. We definitely can't do it now. So yes, it replaces those books, but it does not replace the content of those books. But we want it to be that when you come into the game and go, well, what do I need? You get the starter box, and you get the core box, and you get the core rule book. There's plenty of other things to buy, but to know how to play the game, that's the path. Like even now we have, well, you can kind of get a game armor combat, but also you can do the Battle Mech manual, but then that has this, but not that. It has extra stuff, but it doesn't have this. And Total Warfare is really the core, but it really lacks all these other gear that's in tons of mechs people use. You need TAC ops. Like, we just want to get rid of that confusion. So there will be sequel books. There will be more stuff in later books, but the idea is this book replaces both BMM and Total Warfare from a sense of, here's the main book that lays out the advanced rules of the game to how to play it. More will come.
So how big is this new core rulebook expected to be? I mean, you said it's not another Total Warfare because it doesn't have everything, but are we looking at 100 pages, 300 pages?
Well, I mean, because it's mechs and assets and then extra stuff, but still mechs and assets really allows it to trim down because there's not like all the mountain of short fiction, the modeling guides, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot less there in terms of stuff that would grow the page count. We're broadly looking at a roughly around 200 page mark.
Oh, wow.
That is broadly. It's not done yet, right?
We guess somewhere in the like BattleTech Master Rules.
Yeah, a bit bigger than that. Because that's in the 170 something range, the BMR.
Maybe about
stuff.
the size of Commander's Edition. I think that's 192.
Okay.
But a smaller book, not the old big tome idea. It's interesting if you follow the history of game design, you get the sense of games started out in the 70s of this sort, and they're small, like your 32-page booklets, and you get going, and then you release supplementary stuff, and then the next edition is 64, and then 128 and 256. And until you get to the early 2000s, you get the culmination of that. And Total Warfare is pretty much one of those last examples of the let's just put everything in the one book idea, even knowing that there was going to be more. It's that idea of the big book is good. People are tired of having all the small books. But then when you have only big books, then people realize what they liked about small books. This is a cyclical thing. There will be people now who are grateful that they don't have to have the giant tomes and Total Warfare, but they'll also go, man, I miss having that one book. And then who knows, maybe in 20 years, we go back to Doom Tome and the cycle repeats. But for now, a single book that has everything presumes that everything has equal weight in the community, and it just doesn't. Total Warfare has airships and industrial mechs and backhoes, but it's all there. Support vehicles. These are things that they have a role in the game, but are they the dominant way that people play the game? Well, we found far and away most people play mechs. So here's a mech book focused really solidly on the mech to meet what people actually play without cutting away from that other stuff. We're moving that out to later. If you want to say what you need, let's focus on what people mostly play.
So a good way to maybe look at this is the core rulebook will teach you how to play with what you need to know, but until otherwise replaced, Total Warfare is still an index that could be kind of referenced.
You'll still need it. Like, I mean, if you want to play Protomex, you need Total Warfare. But I mean, you think even back in the day. For now. But like, think back, Total Warfare's out. How do I make battle armor or something?
Yes.
You need combat equipment. Tech manual's not out yet. It's coming. You use that old book, then there will be a new book eventually. For now, you use the book. It's not part of the new line, but that's where it sits for the moment. And then it's just like any other edition of any other game. Like
It's your codex,
yeah.
right? You don't always get your codex right away with the launch of a new book. In fact, if you play Space Wolves like I used to, sometimes you wait, you just don't get one in that edition. But I just to jump in, I think it's important to understand this core rulebook is not, this is the core BattleTech rules. Everything else, one of the things we wanted to do, just take it back a step, is to not have 7 or 9 once we split them core rulebooks. That is not a core rulebook. That is just a line of rulebooks.
But Aron, spine art.
Sure. And God help me, I think a lot of the reason that those books stayed in print and were added to was that spine art.
I know I bought some just for that, just to complete that collection.
It worked.
But those, you can't, to tell someone these are our 9 core rule books is crazy people talk. Like that is not a rational way to introduce people to a game. This core rulebook is the core BattleTech rules. It is more than the Battle Mech manual. It's not just the manual replacement, because that presumes that a new TW is still coming. This is the new TW. This is the core rulebook you'll need to bring with you. Everything beyond this is optional. So the vehicle rules, as we know them now, we just moved those goalposts a little, such that the entry level for vehicles is this core experience. The vehicle rules, as you know them, are optional rules that will be in the advanced rulebook. So I just don't want people thinking that like this is a lesser than product that will still be expanded. It will be expanded with optional additions. We wanted to get away from the idea that all of this is core. This, again, visual, I'm holding my hands about 4 feet apart. That's not a core. That's just the rules. All of the rules. You know, as Keith pointed out, airships. If you want to play airships, you're going to need something else that will, as he said, eventually go through those rules and put out a advanced rule book. But this is the core experience. This is the core BattleTech experience too.
But that's what we used the Battle Mech manual for recently is when we would run tournaments, if it's in the Battle Mech manual, it is tournament legal. And the Battle Mech manual was so close to perfect for that. It was so close, and because it covered most of the things. But so yeah, like Total Warfare is the book that I have in my bag under the table, but Battle Mech manual is the book that is always on the table when we're playing for quick reference. It was really good for that. So I'm super looking forward to this core rulebook, especially if it's only going to be in that 200-page area.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it tight. I mean, it is designed along the same. It is in a lot of ways starting with the basis of the Battle Mech manual. So there's that basis of this is supposed to be a tabletop friendly book. It's not a reference tome, and by that, that's a design statement. It has to be a reference tome and that it has the rules, but it's not the. There's an assumption that if you're looking at it, you're probably playing a game and don't want to take forever to find what you're looking for. So there's this real emphasis on, okay, where is this? Find it. It should be easy to find. Think about it as I'm at the table. Every minute I spend looking for something is while everyone else is standing around, they start checking their phone. It should be easy to find something.
Oh no, someone's DFAing. Let's go to that page.
Exactly. And then I tried to break that down even more because that's a really interesting example because I look at the BMM and I organized it from a reference perspective. I realized looking back when you start playing it, it doesn't flow very well from a play perspective. So those rules are reorganized in this new book to focus on how does things actually work at the tabletop? What happens if you succeed? What happens if you fail? They're 2 separate sections. Go to there, go through it. Because even though wrote that's part of the Battle Mech manual, I realized using that at the table, trying to run the DFA or charge, wasn't working as well as it. Always trying to think, how does this help the table?
Now, you mentioned, obviously, vehicles are not included in this.
In this classic form, the assets are.
Right. So I had 2 questions regarding that. One, we know that vehicle rules will be coming, how do I say it? Advanced vehicle rules will be coming in an additional book sometime later?
That's the current plan,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, anything like that is more of a production question. I'm always hesitant to do it because in the end, that's not my decision to make.
Sure.
We're not getting rid of them. We're not archiving them. We're not saying these rules are no longer exist. They will exist. They are part of BattleTech still. Hopefully they'll get the same kind of attention and maybe even play testing. We're not just going to reprint them as is. I would think we would do a long look at them too. See, hopefully be even better. But yeah, they're not going away. They're just not part of that core experience.
Okay. So if we're looking in the core book, right, as you mentioned, looks like most vehicles are going to be now battlefield assets is the, I guess, primary way to be using the new plastic vehicles that we all have access to. Are we expecting to see BSA cards for every new vehicle now? Is there going to be some sort of conversion, or when can we expect the new, I guess, cards? Or
I don't honestly know, mostly because it's a technical question in the end. It's speaking about a back end and websites and things like that. I mean, certainly a lot more have been done up than are currently available.
The plan is to put them on the relaunched master unit list.
Okay, cool.
The assets would be on there.
Oh, great.
Certainly, if we're doing record sheets on there, I know it's on our roadmap to I think in the next, once we get the thing launched, to have very shortly thereafter get BSPs on there. Again, I can't say it's part of the core experience, and if we're putting all the other core elements for free on this website, then we ought to
have those included.
Include those too, yeah.
This might be a touchy question, but do we know-ish when we might be seeing MUL2 launch? I have you here. You're captive now. I feel pretty confident saying before the end of the year. For those who understand tech things, Josh Perrion, who's our associate developer for digital projects, has essentially been dragooned into being the Catalyst CTO, CITO. So he's got to migrate all of the entire Catalyst presence to a new host to get the master unit list launched. It just can't be launched in our current hosting situation. So that's kind of where it's at. But I do feel pretty confident that we now know the full scope of the issues. Whereas when I was handing out hopeful it'll launch by whatever's, it was backed by a lot of things we didn't know about the broader tech picture. The site is ready to go. It looks great. It just cannot be launched
right
the way it is now. It's the work on it's done. I mean, or close to it.
Keith, in your announcement, you put a handy-dandy link to a PDF that had a quick summary of a lot of the changes in this core rulebook, which I want to say thank you. It's very convenient rather than looking for hints and clues and all sorts of other releases. It was nice to have all those general changes in one spot. So thank you for that.
We will put that link in the show notes as well.
We will. And Denim and I went through it the other day, and we had a couple of questions on some things that were a little vague. And I know that you maybe won't be able to answer all of these, but I'd love to just do a quick rundown of some of our major questions here, get some behind-the-scenes insight as to why they were changed or the thought process behind coming to that decision.
Sure.
If you're open to it, we'd love to kick it off.
Absolutely. I love going to this nuts and bolts design stuff. I mean, back in the day, Randall would put up a lot of design blogs when the new core line was being launched. And I mean, I still have them all. I saved them all on my computer. I would read them all. I found them fascinating. I loved that. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're thinking. Here's why we did this. Here's a preview of this. It was great. It was, I've always liked doing that. And now that I'm in a position to put some of that out there, I'd like to, and I like to talk about it.
Great. So the first question we had, if you're listening at home, if you pull up this document, you can kind of follow along, see some of these changes, and you'll see where Denim and I grabbed these questions from. In the first section, listed simply as general, you mentioned that front-loaded initiative is now going to become standard. However, there are at least 3 different ways to do, quote-unquote, front-loaded initiative. One you mentioned before, where everybody moves up until you're equal, and then you move 1-to-1. That has its own set of problems. Then there's the other one where it's just a reverse of the normal initiative, where you move 2 at a time, or maybe 3 at a time, until you're equal to your opponent.
That one. Yeah, it's the reverse TW, the ratio model.
Okay.
Perfect.
Like you'd see in aces as well and things. Yeah, it's just people liked it. I mean, it worked. I still don't like the whole need to calculate ratios on the fly, but it was, I think, the best of a series of options that were available to us. People were generally more enthused about it than the current model or any other.
I think it's the most commonly used one. Yeah.
Yeah. So then why not go with the people? I wouldn't call it a standard that the community settled on, but certainly a popular alternative. So it seemed like a good idea.
Moving into the combat section. This one is one that I was a little bit shocked to see. Height advantage no longer negates partial cover. I have to ask, why do you hate Obi-Wan Kenobi and the high ground? What have you done?
High ground. Well, this wasn't really I wouldn't say decision, because I mean, in the end, I could have, I suppose, fought against it if I wanted to. This was a Bryn idea, actually. He came to me and said, Randall's son was saying, look, I run a lot of games and playing games here, and we keep running to this of just because of the way mechs are nowadays with hex bases covering terrain, it's easy to lose track of this aspect. And I've run into the same thing at games too. So he said, I'd like to change that, like to move it over. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, I've run into it as well. So I get what you're saying, that people make mistakes there. They miss the opportunity when they should have had it. That's the usual case, but it's possible to get the reverse. So I thought, well, okay, whatever. It's easier to resolve, and it doesn't hurt to, I didn't think too much to have cover still, be a little more meaningful. If you want to get around it, now you got to think more about flanking rather than just getting up high. Height already has benefits in other ways. So, I mean, in hindsight, I think that would be the one thing I would have put it into a playtest document to see how people felt about it. I think it's the one that's been mentioned the most. Although, again, I would say that the TWA would appear in a future TAC Ops type idea. That's my current intention anyways. So I wouldn't think to lose it entirely. And perhaps there's enough pushback on it. It could even be cut somewhere down the road. But that would be future book type idea. For now, that was the thought, that it would just be easier to adjudicate on the table without necessarily transforming the game.
Yeah, because I do remember when it used to be this way to begin with, and then they changed it so that height did matter, because there are, in my experience, very few reasons to take the high ground in BattleTech, and that was one of them, to negate someone's partial cover. I'm assuming that as we play this more this way, where it's not there, we're either going to see people really like it, or people will be like, oh, I understand now why it's important that height negates that. It is because BattleTech's, the scale is different between the mechs, the terrain, and the map, like 3 different scales. It's a very abstract game. And this one right here, because I teach a lot of new players how to play, I actually have a laminated sheet about, do you have partial cover? And it's up on the corkboard, so I can point that out to everybody as we're playing. It is one of the most common questions that comes up with new players.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier to teach new players, but I think as they get experience, people might start to realize, oh, that actually made a lot of sense.
That is an interesting issue you get. Like there's decisions that can make a game simpler, but then you smooth it out, and then you can get to the point where, well, okay, I've got a bowling ball. This isn't really interesting anymore. Crunch adds depth, at least if it's well designed, and that leads to long-lasting play. It leads people to keep wanting to play the game, but it can also turn people off the game. I'm going to be keeping a careful eye on people's reactions to it, how people feel about it. That's the one I think I've really singled out as, let's check in on this later.
Next one, comparative modifiers against immobile targets. The new rules indicate that you should always assume skill 4. Our question was, does that also include pilots that have a piloting skill of 5 or a 6? Do they get better?
The idea is here you're immobile or unconscious. So under the old rules, you modified it if you were unconscious and attached to Kerensky versus unconscious person fresh out of the academy. But you're unconscious. You can't drive the mech. It shouldn't matter, but you were still applying those modifiers. So it was settled on 4, even though your typical piloting skill is 5, solely because you have to apply the -4 mobile modifier. That's just a way to get you 0.
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Very easy. It means the modifiers cancel each other out, and you can just apply the ones that actually matter. It means you'll always start at the kind of 0 baseline. It makes it very simple.
That is a fantastic answer.
Yeah. Denim and I last night were like, why was this selected? I'm confused. And that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You said that several rules were added as standard, yet still optional. Does that just mean that you're changing the binary from like it is now the standard and the optional is to turn it off, whereas it was the opposite before?
In that case, it meant right now Total Warfare has no optional rules. It's just you play Total Warfare. This is the core rule book, but we're putting optional rules in it. That makes it a standard rule, but it's still optional. So floating crits is the best example. We were looking at it originally when I'm putting together the packets. Like everybody loves floating crits. I hear how many times have I heard, why isn't this the standard rule? Everyone plays this, and then put it out there, and then you very quickly find out, well, actually, no, there's also a large contingent of people who hate rule. They're like, stop putting this stupid rule out there.
So you're saying it's going to be more like the BattleMech manual where it is now an optional rule, which...
Yeah, but less aggressive than the BattleMech manual. The BattleMech manual tried a lot more optional rules. This is pretty conservative about optional rules. There's a handful, the initiative die thing that's mentioned, there's a floating crits, it's a big one. There's a couple of very minor ones, but for the most part, the idea was this, as the core rules, we don't want options in here. This is how it's intended to be played.
I see.
If we say the core rules are literally what's in the rule book in the core box, it's just that with a whole bunch of options around it, then we haven't really made a core rule set. We've gone back to BattleTech can be whatever you want it to be. It can be all things. It can be anything. And I think having a more, as Keith said, a more codified starting point for everybody.
That's the exact sort of explanation I was looking for. Perfect.
I think back to second edition AD&D back in the day. It came out in 89, and they went really freeform. They're like, everything has an option or even two, and I think there's in some cases even three options. It's like, we want to build your own game. And it was useful for some people, but confusing for others. And you would get a fragmented base in some ways of what version of encumbrance are you playing or whatever. So we did want to be careful, but you have to acknowledge that floating crits is far and away the most popular of all BattleTech optional rules. And so for me, it felt so prominent. We should put it in the rule book because people are going to ask for it. We don't need to save that for TAC Ops, but most other options we're saving for whatever the TAC Ops sequels.
That rule doesn't take a long time to decide on, or B, figure out.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. Once you look at a hit chart, you can sort of get what it is.
I think in general, the whole push for a lot of these rule changes seems to be streamlining and simplifying some of the rougher edges from Total Warfare. Would you think that's a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting how I put it. There's rough edges that people see and feel like, feel exist and will speak about. And then there's ones that I don't think people are really aware of them, but are definitely there. And so this sort of dive into the rules was in part about trying to get to more of those.
Perfect example is the standing up no longer causes one heat. I will be perfectly honest. I had no idea it did that in the first place. I've been playing wrong this entire time.
The number of people I heard that said that. Yeah, that's a thing. You're like, it's always been a thing. I thought most people just ignored it, but it turns out a lot of people didn't even know about it.
Keith, you expect us to read the rules. We don't do that. We don't read those.
I was telling Steve, that's a good example of like BattleTech as reality simulator. Like, well, if I generate heat for walking and I generate more heat for running, and standing up is a form of movement, therefore I must generate heat when I stand up. Sure. In the reality simulator version of this game where everything must make logical, real air quotes, real world sense, yes. But as Keith said, it's such a random rule that people either don't know about or forget. Yeah. It just becomes cruft.
The only time I ever saw it matter was for TSM people saying, I have to stand up on one try or it's going to ruin my whole heat profile.
Got to get up to get down.
Yeah. And of course everyone else just ignores it because nobody remembers how.
Because it's inconsequential.
Speaking of heat, you mentioned in the new section here that the criteria for determining ammo explosions, when you get hot enough, which ammo bin cooks off, has been simplified. Are you at liberty to tell us what that looks like now, or am I going to have to wait?
When I say you wouldn't care, I really mean it. Like this is the example I was thinking about of going under the hood and looking at rules that no one cares about, but could be simplified. I call it a California emissions rule. So I was thinking about design in games, and there's a whole type of mechanic that only designers care about. You can't use it as an advertising feature. Did you ever watch Price is Right back in the day? And as a kid, I would watch this if I was home sick from school, whatever, and you've got 12 channels or whatever, and there's not much to watch. And they would always give the new car, and they would list all the features, and at the end they would say, and California emissions. And I had no idea what that meant, but it was always on the feature list. And it's that kind of thing that matters, and you kind of have to list, or maybe you only list because you want to pad your changelog. But it only matters to a very select number of people, but it is a real thing that has an effect on what happens. And so, my classic example for that is the equipment list in many role-playing games, where no one really talks about it or thinks about how it matters, but it really does shape the way that a game is played. When you think about, when you see a list and you go, okay, this is what I am expected to buy. Is it a reality simulator and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there? Like what the game is trying to tell you by putting in an equipment list is actually a bigger deal than most people think of, but no one will ever talk about it. So similarly, you've got something like this. Literally no one has ever asked to revise these rules for ammo slot selection.
Yeah, the reason why it popped up is because just recently Steve was playing a game at his campaign night, and that came up. Like, for some reason it mattered. And he's like, I think it's this way, but I'm not sure. So at like 11:30 at night, he called me. He's like, Denim, I have a question. I need to know this right now.
Well, someone's going to die otherwise. We had to know.
Show me on the Battle Master where the ammo bin hurt you.
So most of the 99.9% of the time, it doesn't matter at all. But there's that one time where like, it matters which of these bins explodes. I need to know.
So you give me one sec here. I can quickly pull up the draft and take a look. And because I took the time to really sort of iterate it out and explain. Okay, yeah. So in the Battle Mech manual, I think you've had, no, I didn't detail it slot piece by piece, but there's just more criteria to make it short. Long story short, there's more criteria than you need to determine this problem.
Yes.
And you could remove some of those and still get the general idea across to make this whole thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff in BattleTech that we want to keep this general idea. We don't want to get rid of it, but can we make it a little smoother? So there's been some fair comments about, I'm worried this change X or Y will make the game take longer. There's also a whole bunch of things to try to make the game, like when you're trying to figure this particular aspect out a little quicker. We're hoping it all comes out in the wash at least. Yeah, so it's just 1-2 steps removed. I can't tell you the precise one right off the top of my head.
That's okay. No,
that's that sense. Like, when I look, a better example would be
displacement.
Yeah, domino effect. That's an easy one.
Domino effect is what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, it was originally an 8-item conditional.
Yes.
Why not? Can we get rid of some of those? And it's still domino effect, and it still works the same way. But maybe we don't need all 8 items. Can we do it in 5?
The vibe of if mech hits mech remains. You will get you will not understand the idea of a double displacement occurring.
I was a TO at a tournament recently last year, and that came up once where somebody was like, "Oh, your awesome is standing next to the edge of the thing," and the guy is like, "Oh, that's okay because my teammate is going to move his locust in between, so now my locust is going to protect my awesome from getting pushed off the map because that's the only way you can access it." And so the guy pushed the locust, which then dominoed into the awesome, which then pushed off the map, and they're like, "That can't happen. That's not how that works." And I'm like,
oh, yes, it does.
It is exactly.
Is absolutely a thing. Looking at the attack modifiers table, the BMM had 79 rows. This will have 66.
Oh, okay.
Still a lot of rows, right? There's still plenty there. There's still a ton of modifiers, but you start to chop things down like that. The PSR table in the BMM, you have 59 rows, and it's cut down to 45. And that's even with a bunch of new stuff for terrain and all of that. So there's this sense of all the core stuff is still there, but can we consolidate these things? Can we make it work the same, but require less individual +1s here or there? Or can we even put them all in the same row so that you're not looking for every single one of these +1s to have a separate entry?
Very nice.
Just trying to make it quicker to play the game.
I appreciate that.
Streamlined.
But not streamlined towards a goal, because I have absolutely seen some games that are just killed by this sense that streamline is sacred. That it's just, if you make it simpler, it's better. But BattleTech is fundamentally a crunchy game.
It's a crunchy game.
Yeah. It should be that way. So you've got to be very careful. I told one of the first laws I laid down for the playtest groups is your proposal, we're not streamlining in a vacuum. I view simplification in isolation as a dirty word. Don't do it. That can't be solely the argument for the change you're proposing. We're getting something really good in the way of gameplay out of this if you're going to do it. And simple is a bonus.
So this is going to lead me to my next question. You just said that BattleTech lives off of its crunch. Why remove the fall-facing table? I'm really curious because a 1d6 fall-facing didn't seem that complicated, but is now the rule you can only follow your front or your back? Is that?
Yeah. It didn't add much in the way of gameplay. Like things could come out of it, but they were random. It confused a lot of players. I saw again and again, people would get confused by the notion of this because there's armor facing, you're moving the miniature. I've seen people try to put it on their side when they're taking side hits, especially when they're new. It's something that added a fair amount of confusion to players without adding a lot of. You weren't getting good gameplay out of the complexity from it. You just whatever happened. You roll the die. Let's see what happens. The main thing is the fall. You fall down, you smash, you take a damage. There's still the same 1 in 6 chance to take rear armor. We just moved it to a 1. The bad result.
Sure.
Instead of a 4. Like you notice in the end, almost all of the tables are still there. In fact, there's some new ones. That was the only one thing that I could see that I go, I don't think we're getting anything out of this except confusion. And we're not getting a tactical gain out of the confusion. There's no strategy behind this. What is it here for? What is it doing?
What it's here for, I think, is again that, well, mechs have all these different sides in reality, so they could fall on the right or left, and we have charts for that. And, it's like, to Keith's point, that might make it feel more like, I don't know, I guess somebody could say I'm getting value out of the feeling of how real this seems, but it's not worth the cost and confusion.
Yeah, because there's the luck factor in if you shoot a mech for 20 points and it falls on its back and then flips over, now you can kick them on the rear table. And this won't happen anymore with this system. But it's like a random thing. So,
well, you always flipped over mandatorily for the fall.
Right, but if they're facing each other and it falls down, it falls backwards, and then it flips over, you're now in its rear arc for your physical attacks.
Oh, yeah, in that sense, yes.
But it's luck-based. It's not like you didn't do that. That's not skill. That's not something you accomplished. It just happened to be you rolled a 4, and now they also get to kick you in the back.
We looked at other things that I would have liked to have simplified, but couldn't. This was one that I felt we could get away with. But, I mean, the big thing was the cluster table. Everyone gets annoyed by it. If you have to, I just hit with an LB20X. Crap, I just hit with an LB20X. Or 2 of them, God forbid.
Doom box.
That was the first thing. That was my first priority for change. Like, this is going to change. It sucks. But that was the simplification goal. And it ran right into the game design goal of, no, you can't. There is no way, at least that we found. We tried for 2 weeks to create a new system that gives the same fascinating mathematical product of our current cluster hit allocation system. The cool, incredibly cool gameplay that comes out of it. So I went for the very first time and made myself a box of Doom and said, damn it, I couldn't solve it. It's really easy to make it simpler. Everyone has an idea how to make it simpler. Well, you just cluster it into 5 or whatever. There's so many ways to do it, but those don't make the good gameplay that BattleTech gives you. So it had to die no matter how simpler and faster it would have been.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with that decision, though. That's I've got my Doom box just because of my AC-20s. Yes.
Yeah, it was so much. It was fascinating trying to take that system apart and go, well, surely we can come up with something that gives us that in another way. And you're like, oh man, look at all the neat things this dumbass rule does. It's so cool. I hate it. I love it. Very frustrating experience, but we had to be willing to go one of those places where this isn't working. The current rules are great. Don't change it for the sake of changing it.
Just a couple quick, these are minor ones, but I assume the consciousness checks, you only make 1 per phase at the highest number? It was just for simplicity, so you didn't have to roll 3 times if you took an ammo explosion and a head hit?
Yeah, and there's also we're continually trying to teach people on heat effects. Well, you only use the highest one. And people get it mixed up all the time. And then we have this conscious rule over here. You use every single one.
All right, that makes a lot of sense right there, because I have seen that confusion based on that. So yeah.
So why not? We don't want to get rid of consciousness. Again, this would have been a case of if we just wanted to simplify, throw it away.
Right.
Why just have the mechanic? But no, it's interesting. Neat to be able to blast someone into unconsciousness, but do we need to be so aggressive in doing it? And we can also have the rules in sync at the same time.
Yeah. All right. That's cool. I like that.
I'm going to hazard a guess as to why dumping ammunition was removed, but I presume that has to do with the new ammo explosion rules.
Yeah, that is one of probably my least, next to skidding maybe, was one of my least favorite rules, but more from a conceptual idea. It was a rule created because our ammo rules were so bad.
Sure.
It solely exists to go, okay, so here's the deal. All of that ammo you were taking that you could have left back at base, we're insisting you bring it to the front, but we're giving you a rule to open your rear bay doors and expose your internals in the face of the enemy so you can drop ammo at their feet to get around our bad ammo rule.
Sure could have done this any point in the last 7 hours walking here, but I guess I better do it now.
Why didn't you just tell the damn tech not to put the ammo in? Right? Why is this a rule? It's conceptually, I try not to get too bogged down with reality simulation stuff. Another thing I was constantly saying to the team was, this is a game, not a simulator. No one will ever thank us for making a realistic, shitty rule. That's gotta be, this has to play well.
I tell people a lot that BattleTech is an abstract game, and it has to be. Like, it would not be fun if it was not as abstract as it is.
Yeah.
Every Total Warfare and some of its predecessors, we put that line in the beginning about ranges.
The tennis
weapon
court.
ranges, tennis courts, we all know that, right?
Love it.
And then the rule book goes on to create, as Keith is saying, all these rules that seem to go away from what we said right at the start, that there are abstractions inherent in BattleTech. That being said, here's a rule for everything.
So if we have better ammo explosion rules, and better in the sense of mitigating the need for that rule strictly, you may not still like it, but you can see how the synergy is there. And if we add this new rule we've got, start with half loads of ammo bins. You can, between the two, you'll have less ammo to blow up. When it blows up, you're less likely to die. We don't need the have a standard rule about dumping ammunition at your enemy's feet. Again, we can slate that for the new TAC ops, but we don't need it in core.
Yeah, and I've only ever wanted to bring half tons of machine gun or SRM-2.
Yeah, that's the usual case. AP2, if you're stuck with one of those and you're not using special munitions, that kind of stuff.
Moving into the next section on the chart, the battlefield and urban combat section, I've got two burning questions. One of them is, you tease new weather effects. Traditionally, and you mentioned a little bit earlier on the podcast that weather effects and a lot of the terrain features were really very punishing and didn't incentivize people to really use them.
Yeah, it slows the game down and they're all negative.
Are you able to give us any sort of sneak peek as to what some of those weather effects, even just one, what it may be changed to or that we can get excited about?
You saw them in a bunch of them in the missions playtest. There was an environmental section at the back that gave the general idea, but I started from the philosophy of, so TAC Ops, I think, started from the philosophy of this game is based around the mech. Everyone plays mech, so all of the environments and weather have to affect the mech. I approached it from an inverse of saying the mech is king of the battlefield. There's a reason for that. It's because they can ignore a lot of this stuff. So my vision was a lot of this stuff is going to be punitive for tanks and infantry. Oh, look, it's snow up to a mech's knee. Infantry are not going through this, but that's why you have a battle mech, and that's why they're so popular. You can take them and fight in every environment. So some of the environments, weather conditions that affected mechs in the past will literally have no effect. Night is the key one. I think that was in the missions packet. It does nothing if you're any kind of advanced combat machine. If you're a ground pounder militia infantry, well, there's a reason they're not the kings of the battlefield anymore. You have problems now. If you're a support vehicle without combat, like an industrial mech, you're not designed to fight at night. Here's a problem. Any sort of combat tank, no penalties. Why do we don't need to add penalties just because it's an environment that exists, therefore it must be painful. The other thing is we can look at, snow is the good example, which I think was in the missions packet. We don't just have to make it penalties. We can do entertaining things with it. So one of the things there was the avalanches, where if you slip, you fall and tumble down the mountain and keep tumbling and tumbling. But it's not so much, here's a -3, you can't hit the broadside of a barn and start stacking those penalties. But what can we do that's just kind of fun with this, that'll actually create memorable moments in the same way that skidding theoretically could when you waded through all the rules. But can we do that in a simpler way and go, oh yeah, I was at the top of this level 5 hill and I went down 6 hexes and I collided with this and that created a domino effect or whatever. We can do more interesting things with weather.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I play BattleTech to watch mechs explode. I don't care if they're mine or my opponents. It's the stories that are created in this combat that I play this game for. That's what's always been the driving force of this game. And so anything you can add that adds to the story, like you said, instead of the +3, now nobody can shoot anybody and the game's going to drag on for 5 more hours. That's boring. Avalanche is cool. Like that's the difference. And I like that so much.
It's exciting. I'm excited to see the whole list when we get the final version.
Yeah.
Now, Keith, you just mentioned that, skidding was, obviously it's been removed, but one of the things that was, right.
Sorry, real quick on skidding. There was a note Keith left in the comments, his little notes to me in edit. There was something like removed skidding because like the steps of it, especially when applied with buildings, like bend space and time.
Lovecraftian timing interrupts. I remember that note.
The timing interrupts that occur. Maybe I remember reading it originally in the old book, and feeling like I was playing Magic or something with like, the stack that occurs and like resolving.
That's really interesting you mentioned Magic, because that's actually an analogy that came to mind for me with skidding. But I'll wait to gentlemen here. You were finishing asking about this.
Oh, sure. So one thing that was unclear in the summary document, which may be clear in the book, I just haven't seen it. Skidding was removed just for mechs, for everything, or as a mechanic, it's been removed entirely, I guess is the ultimate question.
It's too early to say. I mean, assets wouldn't use it regardless because they're not doing driving skill rolls and that kind of thing. We haven't gotten to the vehicles stuff yet, but my intention is that it's dead as a doornail for everything, because the problem it creates from a rules perspective is universal regards to the unit type. That is, it creates interrupts. And like skidding is 4,500 words. It's over 5 pages in Total Warfare. It is horrible. It is just a nightmare. And going back to what Aron was saying earlier with Magic, that brings to mind, again, I've always loved these design sort of discussions. And back in the day, there was Duelist magazine for Magic. And you'd get designers come in and they talk about their perspective on things. And one of them, a really interesting article was like, okay, banding is a mechanic in the standard rules where you group all your guys together and they fight together. Everyone uses it. No one plays it correctly. People go, well, it's not that complicated. And you're like, I always ask them, well, how do you play it? Well, I do this, this, and this. Yeah, you're not playing it right. It's easy for you because you've smoothed away in your head all of the problems with it. And you've adopted your own version of it that never has run into the actual problems with it. And if it does, maybe you add a little kludge to it or something. But the point is, you're not playing it right. Skidding is similar in a very straightforward, plain and simple. I'm a mech. I run, I fall, I take some damage. It's easy. And that's how it originally appeared in like City Tech back in 85 or whatever. But so often the case, it's not that. It's I fall and I hit a building. I fall and I create a domino effect. I skid into you and we're now resolving some damage in this phase. We have to calculate the damage absorption from the building. What's inside that gets damaged. There's a reason it's as long as it has. I had to rewrite it in, I think, 10th printing of Total Warfare to just add a whole bunch of extra stuff because one person actually took the time to go through it, which tells you how often it's played, right? Like,
sure.
Right.
And I had to add a bunch of text to this because it still wasn't clear. And it was all about interrupts, timing issues. What happens if I hit this? Well, Protomechs do it differently than this. How do I resolve that? It's awful. It's just awful from a rules writing perspective. As a guy who has to write the rules and write the errata for it, I just don't want to deal with it. It's the worst return of word text to gameplay in all of BattleTech, easily, hands down.
But then you get the gameplay. So those of us who are running the game, somebody just ran on pavement and turned. Okay, stop the game. Let me go get the tome now. Let me pull that out. Let's go to this. Let's go step by step. And for something as simple as turning and moving in one hex, there's 20, 25 minutes gone. Just gone.
It's the Battle Mech manual version as of the last printing is the simplified, cleaned up, expanded, like as clear as I could humanly make it. And it's still 4 pages.
As someone who doesn't use the skidding rules and tries to avoid pavement at all costs, I appreciate you doing this because it has made my life easier going forward. So
no, I want all that time that's been wasted in the 40 plus years I've been playing this game back. I want
no
it
refunds.
Back.
No refunds, Denim. I'm sorry.
Many years ago, there was a game I played in where skidding took place into a building, and the building had a basement, and you just saw the light in people's eyes. Literally, the moment of like, let's just say it's destroyed. The building or the mech. Let's just say the mech is dead. It's dead. It fell on its head. It's gone. Poochie didn't make it back to his home planet. It's done. And I mean, that's to your point. Like, you can get some really arcane the same things that people love about Classic often from a rules perspective become the things that hold Classic back.
Then you've got the people who are diehard, no, I want this, until you play with them, and then they realize, oh, I remembered this differently, or this is not how I played it.
I would say skidding is the number one example of that, of like, of course it works in my head as I do it here at the table, or I don't play with those units that add all this complexity, or, oh, we house rule that.
Right.
Like, so you're not actually dealing with the rule. I mean, I'm not creating there are absolutely fans of skidding who I'm sure play it right, and all 12 of them, God bless you. But I who both like it and know it as it actually is.
Yes.
But it's something I think we can safely slate for a future source book at all. I would never make it even the remotest of apologies, unlike, say, ammo explosions or something, for not having that in core.
Add it into ice planets. You don't have to have it on pavement. If you want skidding, make it Hoth.
Well, ice is simple as well, because ice actually created a whole bunch of really frustrating interactions out of TAC Ops too. So ice in the new book will be a lot simpler. It's just a penalty to every piloting skill roll there. You don't have to deal with all of this wacky slip and slide stuff. It's much easier to resolve.
Nice. Now, in the mission section, there's a note here that indicates that there is now going to be you're incorporating battle value into core gameplay. 2 questions. One, is this just a different way to say that we can expect scales associated with certain mission types? And if it is scale, are they hinterland scale or playtest scale? Because those were presented differently.
Battle value is the official BattleTech balancing system for BattleTech. Like for the game, this is how you play BattleTech in a balanced fashion. And Total Warfare almost goes out of its way not to acknowledge its existence. You have to get a tech manual to really practically apply it. There's a few mentions of it in Total Warfare as a concept that exists, but it's not really integrated in the core rulebook for the BattleTech line. So this is about, instead you go to the tech manual appendix in the constructing a force little thing at the very back, and that's how you apply skill modifiers for pilots and C3 and munitions. It's there in the construction book. So what that statement means in that playtest document is we're going to acknowledge that battle value is a thing, and we're not going to shy away from it. We're not going to hide from it. It's in the book. And here's how you, as you saw in the missions packet, here's outright how you adjust the skill for a pilot with the book you have in your hands. You don't have to go get a sequel book or go to an online tool.
Perfect.
Obviously, in most cases, you're going to want to, but it should be right there. Not everything is there. It's not going to tell you how to make a unit using battle value. It doesn't have the battle values for equipment. It's not about that. It's about purely considering it from a gameplay perspective.
Right. Like this exists.
Yeah. And well, also, here's how you use it when you're playing a game. What do I want to modify this mech to be 3-4? How do I do that? Well, before you had to go somewhere else. We can tell you broadly how to do that right here. If we can put the chart here, why go look in tech manual for it? It doesn't have the one failure for it outright, say, is that it doesn't have the special munitions battle values that most notably for semi-guided LRMs. They need to be redone. They're not done yet. So there isn't a cost associated with them. Semi-guided is not as powerful as it was in the Total Warfare, where it was so powerful as to be banned from tournaments. But it is still strong, and it is still a no-brainer to take over regular LRMs, and there's no battle value surcharge. And there just won't be for a gap of a period of time until we get those new battle value rules out. I would have liked to have them here. They do belong here, but it's just not ready.
I also, though, agree that not posting the battle values of certain equipment or anything is a good thing, because you will probably refine battle value more often than you want to refine the core rulebook. So you can change the battle value independently and not have to put out a revision to the rulebook.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, is that we don't want to tie ourselves down too much with point costs like we did in the past. That's a living, breathing thing. It should be able to change. And the less that it's printed on, the less we're invalidating people's stuff that has those values printed on them. Very excited about a general moving away from that in products so that there's fewer bad costs floating around out there. You just go to the latest place where we have the latest values and the only values that are official. Go there. We'll eventually have that. So I agree with you.
Weapons and equipment. You tease a couple things. Very easy question. Will you tell us heavy and light plasma? What do they do? Will you answer that question?
No.
Okay. All right. That's okay.
It's just a collection of stats, right? They don't do anything. No, I mean, they don't. Well, it's also like, well, it's 3, 4, 9, 8, 12.
I'm writing this down.
It's there's a collection of values. We hope we got it right. It's always dangerous trying to.
Sure.
They might be a little bit on the undercooked side. There's always a tendency to go, I'm creating in a vacuum here. This is going to go out to the world, be on a bunch of mechs. If you create a broken weapon, it's going to be all over the place and annoying.
Sure.
Better be careful. But I think there's a role for them. I think they're interesting, but in the end, they don't do anything that the regular plasma rifle doesn't do. You'll see them soon.
I hope that also means that we're going to have like a new TRO with mechs with these weapons on there. So new mechs, yay?
Well, that's an interesting point. Towards the whole idea of this weapon equipment reshape, it's not just about visiting the past, going back to mechs that exist and improving some of the dud ones. It's also about looking forward. Like bombast lasers were not revised for the 12 mechs with bombast lasers, or at least just not for them. It was about the idea of there will always be more TROs, like death attacks as TROs. That these are things that are inevitable, right? So we have broadly people who'd like to think about suboptimal choices when you're making official TROs. It's fine to do suboptimal things. And yet there's still only so much of an appetite for that, even amongst official designers. There's still a tendency to pick good stuff. So there's plenty of times when you're making new mechs, I'm not putting that stupid bombast laser on here. No, I'm not putting HVACs on this thing. I like this design, and so on and so forth, right? So now with new TROs coming down the road, I'm hoping to see more of these previously dud or suboptimal weapons showing up and thus broadening the design palette without really necessarily creating all new equipment.
That is fantastic news for author Jason Hansa, who is a known enthusiast of the bombast laser despite them being awful. So hopefully...
But now that he won't like them anymore now that they're decent. Like, that's the problem. You've taken what he liked.
Good news, the HVAC is not changing. It's still a giant flaming piece of garbage. You can switch to that for all of your I need crap needs.
There you go, Jason.
As a Karita player, I use a lot of MRMs.
Yeah.
Can we know what saturation mode for Apollo is, or is that a secret too?
No. Well, I mean, I'll tell you broadly that it is an area effect weapon. Now, it changes it to you like saturate the hex. So you do less damage, but you hit everything.
Like elemental killer. I love it.
Yeah, just spray and pray, right? At this point, it's leaning into the weapon of this is a pile of warheads.
Yeah.
We kept going back and forth with this. And the reason that it never came out in the playtest is we simply couldn't settle on both a solid MRM base set of rules that we were sure didn't need to be play tested and a revision for Apollo to go on top of them. So I finally said, okay, look, let's test our MRM concept. I think people will like it, but let's be sure. And then if they settle on that, we can really start hammering away and gives us more time to think about something interesting to do with Apollo other than just more cluster and to hit modifiers.
Okay.
There's got to be something else here we can think of. So emphasizing its choice as a weapon for unskilled pilots who just want to hit the broadside of a barn. This gives you that sense of, well, okay, everything in this hex has to be hurt a little bit.
Yeah, it's firing a cloud of missiles and just hoping that some of them hit.
Yeah, so it'd be good against infantry, battle armor, or that kind of thing. It would not be a good choice against mechs, but that wouldn't be what it was chosen for. But there's still a mode for, if I'm not interested in doing that, I'm just fighting mechs, you still won't feel like you've been robbed. Like there's still elements there. So
nice. So one thing that we haven't really touched on much today, and I know that we are running out of time, battlefield support. Assets now move as mechs. That's a pretty substantial change from what has been introduced in the Mercenaries box and everything else. Why the change? What's the logic behind kind of revamping those assets? Is it to make them more meaningful or just to kind of revamp how vehicles are looked at in general?
The basic idea of assets is to keep them as close to mechs as possible until you need to create either something to fix a gameplay imbalance or something to give it a sort of a feel of a unique design space, to do something different than mechs. But as a simplified tool for running things, it should be broadly close to mechs. So all other things being equal, you'd want them to use the same rules. But this is, going back to talking about things like new weapons, where I've got this new thing. I can only test it so much. I'm nervous about breaking the game. Maybe I'll hobble it. And that was the thinking there. I was really worried about when originally creating the asset rules. Is this going to enable vehicle swarms too much, infantry swarms? Is it going to really make us, especially with TW initiative?
Sure.
Is this just going to be an easy tool to break the game and be disgusting initiative sinks and just get in the way that people would take it? A friend of mine was the first Mechwarrior Dark Age champion back in the day. And he won by figuring out that you could actually just take the cheapest unit in the game, peasant infantry, and throw them at mechs and bog them down and lock them in combat forever and then actually do meaningful things with actual units. So I always think of this idea of like junk spam.
Sure.
So that was the idea behind the original rule. But now, one, Total Warfare is switching to front-loaded initiative, which addresses part of that. The Total Warfare style is being switched to this. And the other thing is that we've just simply had multiple years of playtesting at this point since they first started appearing in Takayad, in Mercenaries. And we've got a sense that it isn't too much of a problem. People are dealing with it. A big part of it is that because you can move through them, they can't block your play. It's harder to lock you in that way. I just walk through them if I want. So ultimately, it was the game design rationale for having that restriction in the first place was removed. And so then we could safely go back to, let's make this work like mech so that people have an easier time adopting the system.
Great. Well, I'm really excited. I like BSPs. I like the assets. I like the kind of flavor you can splash into a game without needing to open up a whole new rule book. So I'm excited for a lot of these changes, and I'm excited that they're included in the core rule book. So this is something I'm particularly interested in.
I'm hoping people like them. They're not meant to replace vehicles. That's the biggest thing. The classic vehicle rules as we know them. They're not the new version of it. When you think of like, you get Interstellar Operations Battle Force, that all those rule sets were not meant to replace BattleTech. Like, we want you to play Strategic Battle Force now. That wasn't it. It was just, here's some new ways to play. There's a lot of people who like that video gamey style. Vehicles are mooks. There's things for me to step on and shoot and I'll get in my way along my way to my objective or fight the real mechs. But there's also people who really like tanks and infantry and want them to be proper units in the sense of I want all the complexity with them. I want them to be meaningful, separate additions to the game space as a whole. And for that, there's the full rules. I don't see them in competition. It was very much an idea. In fact, they should be doing different things. I've seen a fair number of comments like, well, they don't work in the same way enough. They're so totally different. I'm like, well, that was the idea. Why make another version of the same thing? Then you have two versions of stuff that are really close. They should be radically different.
The way I've always described it is, I think I said it earlier, is moving the goalposts, making it so that the first encounter with vehicles that a newer player or someone coming over into Classic might experience is assets. The folks who say like it's, the argument, the pushback I normally get is it's not that complicated. But often that's coming from someone who mastered the vehicle rules years or decades ago. Keith said, I think alluded to it earlier, we don't see, people play mechs. If the vehicle rules were that easy to pick up, vehicles would be more prevalent. They are an alpha, and because they function the same as any, well, not any unit, but they function as the same unit. It's a unit card. They have motive hits, but otherwise they're a unit. And in BattleTech, it's not that way. It's this adjunct thing that people have to learn. But I think the fact that we see so many mechs and the ratios of mechs to vehicles is not the same.
Not even close.
So I think that's what Keith's getting at, is that we needed a better place, a better foothold for people to get interested in vehicles and want to make vehicles part of their classic. If anything, it's a better on-ramp towards those other optional rules, and getting people used to seeing non-mech units on their table. I think, Keith, the way you put it the other day, I like the way you said it on one of the Discord channels, that it's to get people interested in using any non-mech unit, anything other than just mechs.
Yeah, if you're looking at it from a competition perspective, you're approaching it incorrectly, because that's not how we are looking at it. That's not how these are intended to function. Here's a niche that wasn't being exploited. Mooks, minions. It's a simple thing. So that's what they're for. Don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of GMs like this rule set, because it helps you run an OP4, very simply, the poor overburdened guy I'm the one against all you players who all have the luxury of running one or only two machines yourself, where I got to run ever so much. So let's do that. That's a niche that is now filled that wasn't before, and I like them for that. But if you don't want to use them, just don't. But if for a new person that's coming in, ultimately, I'm hoping this does result in a pickup of vehicles, because in the end, right now, not a lot of people are playing them. And so it can only improve from here, I hope.
I will say from a development perspective that part of what I think gave us the confidence to go with the assets rule set as Keith devised it for the Mercs box set, it was Hotspots Hinterlands. That the reports, the things, stuff you guys have said on the pod, but across the board in the community, that those games had people playing vehicles much more often. Those points were not just being turned into strikes or this or that. They were being used as assets. People wanted to have vehicles on the table, or replacements or other things. It wasn't just, all right, well, I get this many points, I'll convert it into BSP and just take damage blobs of whatever size I can afford. Like, there was interest. People felt like, I can have other little things. So the success of that, I think, gave us a confidence, at least from the developmental level, to say, okay, this can be where core starts, rather than go under the hood and have to just try and redo the vehicle rules as they are now in some other way. As Keith said, the simplified for simplified sake thing that he didn't want to do. I feel like that would have been an area where if we didn't have assets, maybe there would have been that risk, right? Well, take this thing and make it simpler. Well, what does that mean? To what end? Like, that's not a goal. That's hard to do too.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see how they work out, and I hope that they have the desired effect of getting people interested in using vehicles more often, because they're fun to see. And they also, as you mentioned, help sell the illusion, or not the illusion, but sell the idea that mechs are kings of the battlefield. So,
yeah. And anybody who listens to the podcast knows that I've been playing a long time. I have opinions about vehicles, and the battlefield assets are my favorite implementation of vehicles that I've seen in a long, long, long time. Very much so as a GM running campaigns. It is fantastic. I can actually get my kids to play because they love stomping on things. It's a lot easier to stomp on a tank than it is on another mech. So I get to throw things at them that they get to just destroy, and it really hooks that interest in playing the game. I'm a big fan. I agree that they need some work and they need some love, and I'm very happy to see it moving in this direction. So, yeah.
You had a question earlier about scale. I'm sorry, we didn't actually get through. I don't know if you want to cover that, sense of the differentiation and such.
I appreciate you bringing it back up. I thought maybe we didn't want to talk about it because it didn't need to be talked about. But you were talking about battle value. This is back in the mission section. You'd said, I'd asked, are we expected to see references to scale more often in the missions? And if we do, are they going to be in line with the Hinterlands book, or are they going to be more in line with what we saw in the playtest document?
So Hinterlands was the introduction of the concept, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with the implementation of it, but it doesn't work for me, as I was looking at the missions, from the needs of a generic mission template. Okay. Which is to say, Hinterlands is very specifically 3000 BV, which is a less granular scale, and it's always assuming a certain amount of battlefield support points, BSPs, that are thrown in there. But in this book, battlefield support is optional. So how can we say your mission structure is you are mandatorily using an optional rule? So I wanted to go back to something a little more granular and something that didn't have that fixed aspect to it. But that's why it does say, and this was even in the missions packet, other products will use other scales as they see fit. This is the universal scale. 2000, no attachments. When move that up and down. But if you're making a campaign pack and you're like, I need this, I want everybody to have fixed pilot increases, or I want everybody to have airstrikes, and then you can build those into the scale for that campaign. But we've gone with 2000 because it makes it very easy to adjust certain things. For instance, something that wasn't in the missions packet, but will be in the final version, is here's the fixed amount of BV we recommend for your generic game. But here's some add-ons of the typical style that most people want to add to the game. How do I add more units? 1000 BV, just add a scale point. 3000, that's not really just one unit anymore, unless you're going pure chunk, right? I want a little more tech at a scale point. I want a little more, more skilled units at this scale point. So we've broken it down and showed you how you can do that. 2000 works really well for that. And then that includes expenditure on assets if you guys are using that optional rule. And if you're not stuck with this contradiction in the rule book of you must use this option. So that was the thinking behind shifting it. It's not going to contradict hinterlands, and you may see all sorts of different scales and different products. It'll allow every designer their own campaign pack to make it the way they need to, but at least have a universal language settling it down. Okay, what's the scale on this thing? I see how it's working. That's fine.
Great.
That's the hope. Anyways, we'll see how it goes. That was the thinking.
Did you want to talk about tech bases?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so one of the other things you might not notice, the sense that all of this, the rules levels and things like that have been culled.
That's probably for the best.
Look, I remember it from the old day. Like it's changed a few times, but like level 1, level 2, level 3, and then standard, intermediate,
advanced, experimental, introduction, primitive.
Introduction of what era? Like that's
Keith, quick. It's 3152. What's an advanced piece of equipment? Go.
Consult the alternate table for. I remember when we were first doing that, and I said this was second only to not making the AC2 have 50 rounds per ton in terms of crimes. It was just, this is not a good idea. I don't think people are going to thank us for this, and I don't think we should do it. But
we've done an entire podcast on that subject. Yeah.
Oh, what, the AC2?
No. Well, yeah. No. The tech level.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty junior then. So I just, you add your voice to the choir, and in the end, it was decided we should do this. And you can see the appeal of it in the sense of, the universe is a living, breathing thing, and it's shifting. And okay, now this stuff that used to be rare, it's really starting to get out there. It's absolutely in service of something, but it adds a lot of complexity. And when writing the core rulebook, there's this feeling of, we don't want to start adding all these arbitrary labels. And Tech Manual has even more availability and legality, right. And there's all of these different ways of filtering things that serve a simulationist end that I don't think in the end a lot of people use. It adds confusion, but not much else.
They've become arbitrary lore levels. Like maybe they had, I guess when it first envisioned, there was that kind of real crunchy game rule element to them. But anymore, it's just become another lore filter. It's become
it meshed with the MechWarrior role-playing system is what it did.
Yeah, it's gonna, and I understand that's going to be unsatisfying to folks out there who did use that as a way to adjudicate like lists in organized play settings, but there was still, I don't think that was like the be all end all either. Like as a system, I think there were loopholes there that people were probably exploiting, and that TOs probably had to work around known problems with that. So
nice.
So you won't be seeing that kind of stuff in the new book.
Bravo.
That's, again, great news. I didn't like it anyway, so no skin off.
I think you're right, Aaron. I think this was the right guy to put in charge of all this.
I'd say.
Final question for you, gentlemen. What are you most excited about that you think people are going to love?
Well, what I'm most excited about is a little different there. Aaron, how about yourself?
Missions. I hope I didn't steal Keith's answer. Did I?
Oh, you did. You're a jerk. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's it. Good night, everyone. Missions, for sure. Mostly because I think, in large part, the thing that made, at least myself, and I think Ray too, excited about this book, the idea of doing this, was to really do a robust mission section. Not just those couple of pages that in Total Warfare that are mostly tables and all basically next to useless. To get the material in that actually tells people, you have rules. God knows you have rules. We have more rules than you can shake a stick at. And you have miniatures. How do you make a game of BattleTech? How do you do it? If it's BattleTech night at your local game store, you're going to go down, you're going to play a game of Classic. Not sure who's around. There's a couple people who are interested. How are you making a game without having a week-long Discord or email conversation beforehand to work out all the parameters? What Keith built with missions, and I think you saw in the play test, was a common language, a shared language, a framework to do those pickup games in a way that is interesting and most importantly has replayability beyond just use a different map sheet. That's part of it, but that you can add different battlefield conditions, you can add different elements to these standard missions, or use them to create your own too. Even in the create your own realm, that there's still, we're all fishing out of the same bucket of building blocks to do it with, rather than where we seem to love, historically, we as BattleTech developers seem to love to leave it as, it can be anything you want, anything. Well, that's great, but anything is very hard for somebody new to grapple with, especially if they don't have a guide. And as the game has grown over the last few years, I feel that we need to make products that keep in mind not everybody is being brought into the game by their friends who have played it for years or decades. That there are people who might walk into a Barnes & Noble with their kid and buy a box set and need to, and then like it and get the rule book and have to kind of figure it out. And to lower that bar and make it more accessible through missions, I think is, I'm excited for it. And I think people are going to get a lot of use out of it. It's not some tacked on, yeah, and I guess you could probably do this and that and call it a mission or whatever. It's really well thought out. It's really well, as you saw in the playtest, really useful and malleable to what people need, but gives them a shared starting point.
Aron, I could not agree with you more. It's such a big thing. I think the closest thing we ever had, I think in the 90s, was that First Strike book that came out.
First Strike. Great book.
I love it. I have a printout that I carry with me until we got these missions and things. That's what I would use at the gaming store to go over and explain to people.
That was a real inspiration here.
So the progression from First Strike to this is fantastic. I'm very happy to see it go in that direction. Very happy.
I've wanted this for such a long time. And and again, thinking of comparing the assets, it's not about making a new true one way, but here's another thing that we didn't do that we now do.
Yeah.
That you can do if you want. If you want contextless, no lore, no era, let's just play the game of BattleTech, which is in the end how this game started out. It had lore in the box, but ultimately a game lives or dies on its ability to be played in and of itself, its own mechanics, how much you actually like playing the game. This is about just giving you game. Play it. There are campaigns. There are mass combat systems. There are all sorts of other ways to play BattleTech, but we always shied away from this. And with rare exceptions, it's certainly in the core rules. I want to see more of this. I'm very excited about it too, but it would not be my answer, if only because it's already out. So I'm thinking, I'm kind of biased in the sense of that was shown. So I've kind of had the sense of, yeah, okay, that's out there. For me, the most exciting me is the thing that was not shown, the last holdout, which was the whole complete urban combat rewrite.
Nice.
Everything it's not just about removing skidding and otherwise using the same rules. All the building rules have been redone. All the environmental effects for urban combat are new. To get this sense of one of the most interesting, exciting, memorable pieces of BattleTech art ever for me is an archer just bashing its way through those walls in City Tech. And I want that without going, oh God, I have to calculate the construction factor of that. Okay, now how much damage does that archer take? I gotta see the art molding to the archer raising his arm to his head and scratching it and stopping. Well, you start calculating this. I want to Kool-Aid man my way through a city.
Oh yeah.
Why is the Panther an urban fighting mech? Why is the urban mech an urban fighting mech? How can we put that into the rules?
Yes.
What's the advantages there? So trying to get that, starting top to bottom, being able to say, we can throw all this out. We're not keeping any of this. We're not doing any basements. Forget it. They're gone.
Oh, nice.
They're no longer the greatest predator of mechs.
So bad.
The Sarlacc pit of the basement is gone. It's funny. And they're funny. And it creates memorable moments of, oh, I fell in yet another mech scale double basement. Who keeps fucking digging these things?
Exactly. Especially since they're random. Like when you open a building, you roll a die and you get to see if there's a basement. You don't know.
Why didn't they stop the clan invasion by making basements? It would have been so easy. But so it's all gone. And instead trying to replace it with something that when the city map comes out and the building tokens start being laid down, the first response of people isn't, oh, God, kill me. I remember playing Gen Con the first time I went, 2018, rolling up to an official event. There's a big city map there. There's lots of buildings. And I asked the demo agent, oh, okay, are we playing with Total War for urban combat rules? always remembers reply. He just starts laughing. He didn't say a word. He just starts laughing. It's like, you don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So I want it to be, hell yeah. We were playing the core rulebook, urban combat rules, start smashing away into buildings and dropping buildings on people. And let's go.
We just finished printing out all the buildings for the giant BFM HPG map. So I'm super happy to hear that we'll be able to use these rules for it and actually make it a dynamic, exciting city battle instead of, a 16-hour slogfest.
I'm calculating, I'll give you one preview of it. There's a new class of building called civilian buildings, and they exist to be Godzilla. They exist to be flattened. They have no effect in any way, shape, or form except to block line of sight.
25% of them are orphanages.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and nursing homes for orphans, who knows, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Fill them up, puppy factories, pillow factory, just everything you can think of. Yeah, war crime, your way, that was absolutely in the designer notes. These are your war crime options, right?
Fantastic.
So I wanted that sense. It still matters from a tactical perspective. I can't see you, but I can level this city if I want to. If there's enough civilian buildings on there, as soon as you enter them, they die. You shoot them with any mech scale weapon, they die. Not infantry. Infantry can go in them, but it's just a whole new class of opportunity to lay waste to an urban environment.
Love it.
Now I'm excited. That sounds pretty cool. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I think you've answered all of our questions in more than enough detail than we deserve. So thank you both very much for coming onto the podcast this evening and giving us so much of your time. It was a pleasure to have you. Just make sure on your way out that you get that stamp for your parking validation.
It's important.
It is. And we genuinely hope that our listeners have found all of your answers both helpful and informative. So again, thank you both very much. Listeners, as far as I've been led to believe, this stuff should become available at Gen Con. And then, if I'm, again, understanding this correctly, we're expecting this to hit retail shortly, quote unquote, thereafter. Do we have an idea as to how far after Gen Con people should start seeing these hit their store shelves?
Not long after, several weeks, maybe a month or so. The goal is as the deadlines Keith and I are under are evidence of, the goal is to have the products at Gen Con be not just advanced copies flown in, the first off the press is flown in small numbers, but that the products will be in the warehouse at that time. So it'll just be a matter of setting a street date and getting them out.
Fantastic.
That's all.
Our goal, as I mentioned to Steve earlier, is that to not do the thing that we have run into in the past, we as a company, where something is launched at Gen Con in very small numbers that are gone within an hour or two on day one, and then nobody else sees it till Black Friday. We are familiar with the frustration and bad feelings even that can really create among customers, and people are just eager to get this stuff and not just to a few folks who are lucky or knew someone. So,
Aron, we would all like to give you our money. Please let us give you our money, please.
And that print deadline is just, it's so, hard. You don't have any flexibility, right? Gen Con is Gen Con. Right?
That's, and in some way, I don't know, I guess it kept us honest, because I think we could have tinkered and iterated and sort of
developed more sleep.
Well, certainly that, but it's always good to have a deadline, and just then it's done. It's over. It's to the printer.
Great. I am very much looking forward to seeing this stuff, getting my hands on it, especially the new models. That Contiel looks great. Thank you both so much for coming on. To all of our listeners, you can join in on this exciting, new, ongoing discussion by joining us on the Discord, or if you've got questions, feel free to write us fan mail or list review at themechbaypodcast@gmail.com. Special thank you to all of our patrons and Bobby over at Fortress Miniatures and Games for helping support us. And remember, reading the rules is optional and probably located in a different book.